this is Mud. Hey, I got something really interesting today that I'm working on, and I want to show you guys, tell you a little bit about what I'm going to do to it and how I'm going to go about it. This is a buddy of mine. He collects guitars, and this is a 1950 Broadcaster. This is one of the first years Fender built this guitar. The Broadcaster is the predecessor to the not only the Telecaster but the No-Caster as well. There's a little sticker right here that says Broadcaster. But anyway, very valuable guitar, collectible guitar, and today I'm going to do just a little bit of work on it. I'll tell you what's wrong is it's just got a couple of high frets on here. The fret ends are out a little bit, but I'm not really going to mess with those. I've just got a couple of high frets where it's buzzing. The guy who owns it likes to bend notes pretty far, and so there's just a little bit of sizzle in there I want to take care of, but also I don't want to do anything else to this guitar. Because of the collectability of it, we need to maintain as much of that as possible. So that's what we're going to do. Cool. So what I'll show you when I get to that point, what's going to happen with it. Okay, so while I was using my phone, which is what I'm taping this on, I took really detailed pictures of the whole guitar. The body, the front of the neck, the headstock, the back of the body, back of the neck, back of the headstock, the sides of the guitar, the ends of the guitar, the sides of the neck, and the sides of the headstock. So I just wanted to get really good documentation so I know what shape the guitar is in, where all of the little scratches and dents and dinks are on it. And again, I'm just trying to preserve what it is, not change it. So I'm just documenting the guitar, and it's just a really good rule of thumb when you're bringing guitars in to make sure you know exactly what they were when you got them. Cool. Okay, I'll come back in a couple minutes. I'm going to take the strings off of this thing and actually remove the neck, and we'll take a look at what's going on inside this head, inside of this pocket. One of the things I noticed right away is that on these early guitars, the neck really doesn't fit that well. This pocket is a little bit sloppy, so to speak, around it. But that doesn't mean anything. I'm just saying that, you know, this was cut, and then, you know, there's obviously probably some shrinkage on both pieces over the years. But we're going to get in there and look. The E string is really close to this edge, and I just want to see what's going on in there. Cool. Hey guys, so check it out. I got you on a little bit more of a close-up here, but I want to show you a couple of things. So one, I got the neck off, and I took some real detailed pictures of the signature on the end of the neck. And I'm still trying to figure that out. I know Taddeo was there in this time, and the numbers actually look like his handwriting, but the signature looks a little, doesn't quite say Taddeo. So if any of you guys know who that was, or if he just screwed around and wrote silly names down sometimes, who knows. But anyway, that's it. So I identified the date, so the 25th week of 1950 this guitar was built. You can see the flathead truss rod adjustment. So one of the first things I did is just a very slight adjustment just to get the board as flat as possible. Then what I did with my little fret rocker here is I went through and identified all of the frets that were a little high, and I very, very carefully marked the areas that were high with a Sharpie, as you can see, all the way down the neck. I've identified just those areas that were a little bit high. So I'll get back to this in a little while. The other thing that I noticed is that in the pocket of the guitar, there's these two little tiny shims. Okay, now I don't know how many times this neck has been off of there, but I don't suspect very many times, so I don't know if these are original shims or not. But one of the things when we first looked at the guitar, we noticed that that these were up pretty high. They're sitting way up. So we may put this back together without the shim just to see where we are. But regardless, this will go in a baggie, be marked, identified, and put back in the case, unless we use it, unless we put it back in. So anytime you work on something like this, you want to make sure that you keep everything from the guitar. Okay, Okay guys, so here's what's been going on while I was off camera there, is I've taped off this fingerboard. And when I did it, I used this transfer tape. This stuff is really low tack. They use it for transferring vinyl stickers onto things. So this stuff is really great. It's super low tack, and I can tape the board off and have confidence that it's not going to yank the finish off. If you use some of those other tapes, green tapes or blue tapes or something like that, on these finishes that are crazed, have all the little cracks in them, there's a good chance that when you peel that tape off, you could do some damage, remove some finish on the guitar. So I always use this really low tack tape when I'm doing this. So what I want to show you is I've got a high fret here, and this is, I'm going to see if you guys can hear this. Okay, so that's a high fret there. It's up a little bit. Now, a lot of guys may say, hey, Mud, just take a block and level all the frets, and you can do that. But on this value of a guitar, something I would have to sell my house to pay for, I like to take a little bit more time. So I've got a very fine mill bastard file here that I'm actually going to take each fret, those areas, and knock those down until we are pretty much level. So when you're working on a guitar like this, you want to spend a little bit more time and just take each fret individually until it's not rocking anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with this file now. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work the very center. So if I go to the center of the fret here, there's my little rock. That's where I'm going to start. I've got my file, and I'm very lightly going to just take a few strokes on there and knock that down. And I'm going to check it again. And yes, this is time consuming, but it's the right way to go. Okay, getting a lot closer. And there it is, no rock. Can't move it. So I've got that fret down level with its partners there in that one area. So I'm going to go ahead through and start working the high side. I'll get the high side down, then I'll get the low side down until we're all level. Now some of these frets, if you noticed, I've just marked them in a little spot. So this is the only area. But when I work this fret down a little bit to get it level, I'll go back and double check and see what's going on with this guy. See, because it should be a little bit higher. And I may go through this process 2 or 3 times over the course of this leveling process just to try to get everything as close as possible without mowing anything down. And then I'll come back and I'll show you guys, once I've done that process, I'll come back and I'll show you guys the polishing process. Okay, so here we go. I went through with my file and I got everything leveled. The tricky part was when I had 2 frets next to each other that were high. So what I ended up having to do was to, I'd file one, the one next to it that was high got a little higher because I lowered the one next to it, so I'd filed that one down, and as I filed that one down, I had to go back and forth a couple of times to check to make sure they were level with all their partners there. So that's taken care of. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back with my leveling block. I've got a block here. This is what I use for most of my level, crown, and polish. This is a 600 grit diamond impregnated panel here that I've got mounted to this block here. And I'm just going to go back and very lightly run across all the frets just to make sure if there's any minor variations in there. But I'm going to spend just a very little bit of time on this, and then I'll go ahead and remark all of the frets and I'll show you the crowning process. So okay, so here's what I did. I went through with my 600 grit and I put my little shot bag underneath it here, because when you're pushing, if you set this neck down, you push down, it'll bow in a little bit. So I got my little shot bag there supporting the neck, and I very lightly leveled all of these frets here. Okay, just a real light once over. I don't want to mess too much with the frets that were in good shape. Now I'm going to go ahead and check it with my feeler gauge and my straight edge here. I'll see if I can get you guys a good view of this here. So I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to sit it on top of the neck here like so, and then I've got a 3/1000 feeler gauge here. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, it's on the other side. Of course you can't. And I'm going to pick the neck up off the table. I've got my straight edge on there, and I'm going to run my feeler gauge under and make sure that it's catching all the frets up the board, okay? And I'm going to do that in 5 positions. Make sure I'm level all the way across. And you'll notice that it slips under the first few frets here where the block of the neck is. Right here where the block, this actually slides under, and it starts catching up there, right at that end there. And that's fine. This is a little bit of ramp on there. When the neck rotates forward with the string tension on there, you won't get buzzing up in these areas. Okay, so just wanted to show you that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and mark all these frets again with the Sharpie very carefully, not to get any Sharpie on the board. And then I will go ahead and start my crowning process. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get that done. So I've got my crowning done with my file. I've narrowed up all of those Sharpie lines as narrow as I could get them. And now I've got some 600 grit here. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to lightly, you know, luckily with this I went so light on everything that I don't have to do too much heavy polishing with this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and just run over my edges here, get the rest of my black marks off here with the 600 grit, and clean these up. So I'm going to do this whole thing with the 600 grit, and this is why you tape it off, because if you look, you see all that stuff there. You don't want to get that into that maple board, into that old lacquer, because you won't ever get it out. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and finish up with this 600 grit. Then I'll go ahead and hit it with 1000. With the 1000 grit, I'll also cross across the fret this way, and then I'm going to finish up with some 4/0 steel wool, and I'll come back when I'm getting to that. Okay, so we're getting there. We're getting real close. So I've got some 4/0 steel wool here, but if you notice, I laid down some paper towels, and there's a reason for that, because when you use this 4/0 steel wool, a lot of it falls off, and it'll get down in your carpet or whatever you're using to pad your bench. And the next time you have a guitar up there, like an electric guitar, and say you had to flip it over, guess where all that stuff goes? It sticks right to the pickups, and it can screw your pickups up. So I put down some paper towels. I'll still double check, blow my bench off, and use a magnet to try to get out anything else that got in there, residual stuff that gets in there. But anyway, so now I'm going to use my 4/0 steel wool, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to carefully hit every single fret, and I'm going to take a good look at it until I think it's pretty. And as soon as I think it's pretty, I'm going to stop. I don't want to make this guitar look brand new. Not that I could if I wanted to, but anyway, this is the way I'm going to clean up these frets finally. So I'm going to go ahead and work on that. I'll get all these things nice and shiny, and then I'll pull all this tape off and give it a quick dust off, and then we'll take a look at it from there when I get ready to put it all back together. So I wanted to show you guys this, even with the low tack tape. I want to show you how I pull this stuff off of here. I'm just going to get the little edge, and I pull it completely over, like on a 180-degree angle from how I'm taking it off there. And that is going to minimize the chance of any finish coming off with it. So you pull it really flat, really slowly, watching the whole time, making sure you don't bring in anything you don't want to bring with it. Nice and easy. And you see that, and that's why I love this really low tack tape. The other thing I want to show you is this, if you can see it. You see all that? That is all steel wool that comes out. So every time you use a piece of that stuff, this stuff gets down in there. And here, let me show you. So here I got a little magnet here on the end of my ruler, right? And guess what? The second you turn another guitar over on that stuff with a set of pickups, that's what you get. Fuzzy wuzzies. You don't want that stuff. This is nasty stuff. You do not want to get that into your pickups there, okay? See it? Ugly. You don't want it. Of cool, man. I just wanted to show you that stuff. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna dust this sucker off a little bit. There's all our cleaned up frets. Still looks like it's from 1950, which is what we want to leave. Don't ever mess with these. I mean, I don't recommend it. When you have a guitar like this that has these little finger marks and stuff in there, don't mess with them. Leave them alone. They took a long time to get there. It's character marks. Do not mess with them. Unless the customer specifically says they want them messed with, but I would highly advise them against it on a guitar like this. You know, like I said, if you got to mortgage your house to pay for the guitar, you probably don't want to mess with it too much, any more than you should. So anyway, I've got these all cleaned up, so what I'll do is I'm going to put this thing back together, get a set of strings on it, and we'll talk a little bit more about it while we're doing that, just the final setup on there and that little shim thing I was talking about. Okay guys, I want to show you something else. Check this out. So when I got this guitar, I noticed that this plate right here was not all the way down, and this screw, this little flathead screw that's holding it in, is actually, the body is stripped out. The screw is not holding it in. So like I said before, I don't want to do anything permanent to the guitar, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this screw out of there, just like so, and I've got some of these little flat style toothpicks. I have the round ones too, but I'm going to use the flat one for this. And all I'm going to do is I'm not going to glue this. I'm just going to simply stick it down in the hole, and I'm going to crack it off and leave it down in there. And then I'm going to put this screw back in, okay, because I don't want to do anything permanent to the guitar. I don't want to do anything that can't be undone. So now that screw's biting pretty well. I've got a really good flathead screwdriver. Well, it's still sharp anyway. And I'm gonna just snug that sucker up. Now normally what would happen is my OCD would make me go through this whole guitar and line up all the screw heads in the same direction, but that's absolutely ridiculous, so I'm not going to do that. I'm sure Fender didn't do it, so why should I? Anyway, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and get the neck bolted back on here, and then we'll see about these saddle heights to see if there's something if I want to leave that shim out or not. So yo, okay you guys, here I am. I know I'm in a completely different setting. I meant to take this video back at the shop, but I forgot. A couple people showed up, wanted to look at the guitar, and that turned into a whole thing. So anyway, I did put it all back together, strung it up, put a set of those clear tone 1046s on it, and I did not put the shims back in. I bagged those up, I marked them, identified them, and put them back in the case, because what was happening before with the shims, these saddles, I mentioned it really early on, these saddles were really high up, and I don't think that would have originally been the way they had wanted it. However, the shims look like they had been in there since 1950, so maybe that was the way they wanted it. So I took those out for the guy who owns it now. Wanted a little bit, the playability, the way he likes his guitars is the way I tried to set it up. So I was able to bring the saddles down a little bit, adjust the pickups a little bit, and set it up to his liking. So yeah, this is just a really cool 1950 Broadcaster. It's pretty interesting, you know, because you know, they called this the Broadcaster, and then Gretsch had a drum kit that was called the Broadcaster, and they had sent Fender a cease and desist, so that's when the Broadcaster became the No-Caster. It just said Fender, and then within the next year, I think 1951, they came up with the name Telecaster, and then it's all history, and I think they had the Esquire as well. But yeah, 1950 Broadcaster, great guitar. It's really playing nice now. I can get those bends without the squeak that he was describing. The other thing I noticed is that I had a little buzz on the B and the E in the open position, and all I did there is I took my 10 and my 13 nut file, and I just made sure I just added a little bit of angle of it. I didn't really shorten the action height over the first fret. I just put a little angle in there just to make sure that the string was intonating off of the front of the nut and not the back side of the nut. So I did that and got rid of those little buzzes that were there. We plugged it all in. I did some pretty heavy documentation of the guitar while it was apart, all of the different parts, the the paint can pick guard, and all the capacitors and everything, the switches, the switch, and the pots that are in there, the original wiring. I'm going to give all of that stuff to the owner now just to make sure he has really good documentation of it. This guitar is well documented, but I wanted to make sure that he had everything on top of that I saw while I had it apart. These guitars don't come apart very often, so you might as well do it while you're in there. So I've done that for him, and it's playing great. Everything's cool. Like I said, I didn't have to put the shims back in, and yeah, I like it. Super cool, and it's really an honor that I get to work on these things. It's nice that people have faith in my work, that I'm not going to mess up their guitars. So I just want to thank those guys for letting me do this kind of stuff, because it's really cool having a piece of history in your hand, But anyway, that's it from Mud. Stay tuned, and I'll let you know when other cool stuff comes up, or whether I'm working on a trailer, or working on a car, or writing songs, or whatever the hell it is I'm doing at the time. I will definitely have more stuff out there. So cool, peace. Y'all be nice to each other, and I'll see you next time around.